the lithium potential has always been there. Since the 70s, it's been known that those pegmatites are there. So fortunately for us and for Azure, they've made this phenomenal discovery. And I think the excitement is unbelievable what we're seeing at the moment in the Pilbara. But I think it's fair to say that it's well justified.
Hello, and welcome to the Market Bull Podcast. Please note, topics and stocks discussed in this podcast are not financial or investment advice. Dusko Ljubojevic is the Managing Director of Raiden Resources, which is listed on the ASX and DAX under code RDN. Now, Raiden Resources is an exploration and development company advancing projects with a focus on West Australia, and in particular, the South Andover projects. Dusko talked about the recent shift to focus on critical minerals and why it is paying attention to the South Andover area. Given the recent success Azure Minerals is having, there is a spotlight on the entire area, and Dusko elaborated on how much that is impacting the company and the tailwinds that this could have. Dusko discussed what investors can expect coming from the projects over the coming months and why he is fascinated in this area. Here is Dusko Ljubojevic.
So hello, I'm Ben Kostrich and this is the Market Bull Podcast. Joining me today remotely is Dusko Ljubojevic. I'm hoping I've said that right. We were just practicing. He is the Managing Director of Raiden Resources that's listed on the ASX under code RDN. It's having a fair bit of success recently, which we'll touch on about their Andover South lithium projects. It's getting quite a bit of attention on the ASX. And as we're recording on the 9th of November, they've had a pretty impressive result, but we'll dive into all that in a little bit. So welcome to the show, Dusko.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we were saying the origins of this company, you're currently speaking from, I guess, where the projects originally started. But before you became involved in the company, I mean, what is your origin really as a geologist by profession and venturing down this path to a managing director?
Yeah. So yeah, as you said, I'm a geologist. I went to university in the US, studied geology, and then started my career in exploration. It was pretty much everywhere. I wanted to see as many rocks as possible. Worked in quite a bit in North America, in a number of African countries, in Asia, in Australia, in Europe as well. And then ultimately got onto the corporate side of things and started developing portfolios of projects and basically learning the ropes on the corporate side, putting it together, structuring it the right way, getting it into companies, and ultimately one of those companies. We started the company back in, I would say the initial portfolio was commenced in probably 2016. So I was involved with that. And ultimately, we IPO'd the company in 2018. So I've been the managing director. It was just a natural progression from technical to corporate in a portfolio which I helped to generate. And it was a natural progression to the corporate side. So while I'm a geo, most of my time these days is spent in Excel and contracts and negotiations.
And I mean, that was the other interesting point when I looked at it, and we were saying before, there's projects all over the world, but predominantly now it's having a shift because of the electrification future. So, I mean, can you just describe what Raiden Resources is and I guess its current focus and attention of what it's looking at achieving?
The absolute focus is the Andover South project, and we can talk about that in a little more detail. But ultimately, the company started off as a copper gold exploration company in the Western Tethyan. We picked up a very large portfolio of projects in Eastern Europe between Serbia and Bulgaria. We were focused on porphyry and epithermal exploration. In 2020, we with COVID and with the gold markets the way they were, especially in WA, we pivoted to Australia. We picked up a portfolio project in the Pilbara with a focus on actually the Arrow Gold project, which was just up the road from Hemi, 30 kilometers along strike, very comparable geological setting. And we worked that up. The company then involved, within that portfolio, we acquired also nickel, copper, palladium sulfide deposit. We crude that out. We drilled out a resource over there. And we're still in the background working up the metallurgy on that project, the Mount Shoal project. But ultimately, it's gods of exploration that have led us to, in the right time in the market, to a fantastic project in the Pilbara. It's aligned well from a technical point of view and timing and markets and commodity cycles. So it is Andover South, the ultimate focus for the company at the moment.
Yeah, and I think many are tracking the Andover commotion given Azure Minerals and a lot of the excitement there with, again, it appears like it's come out of nowhere, but there's been a considerable amount of work over the past couple of years to get where it is, but now it's shone a real light on that area. And I note this because a lot of your results and some of the work that you guys are doing now is starting to, again, paint a picture that there could be a bit more in that general area. So if you're describing that project and I guess a bit of the excitement behind it, why is this so attractive for you guys? And yeah, as you said, the South Andover project, it's in the Pilbara, but yeah, just explain a bit more about that.
Certainly. So just a bit of background: when we actually started looking at these projects in similar fashion to Azure, we were looking at the nickel copper potential because of the Andover complex. They had some success there early with their nickel project, and we're just 30 kilometers away with our Mount Shoal project. So that was the initial reason why we started looking at the ground and negotiating for some of the properties which we have right now. The lithium potential has always been there. Since the 70s, it's been known that those pegmatites are there. So fortunately for us and for Azure, they've made this phenomenal discovery. And I think the excitement is unbelievable, what we're seeing at the moment in the Pilbara. But I think it's fair to say that it's well justified. If you look at the quality of their discovery, it's going to be one of the biggest lithium projects in the world, in one of the most focused commodities right now, probably for the next 10 years. This is what everyone's talking about. What we're so excited about it is, first of all, the projects are immediately adjacent to this Azure's project, Andover project, both on the north and the south. We have ground immediately adjacent to them. We had some very early success there. We just started mapping in the field as soon as we could get out onto the ground, and we realized that we have similar pegmatites to what they have. And I think the real uplift or recognition from the market was once we started recognizing that, one, we have grade, two, we recently announced that spodumene seems to be the dominant mineral within the system. And we also, we've mapped out some pretty wide pegmatites at surface, up to 50 meters wide. So I think that's the real excitement around this project, is the fact that, we have very good grades. Like just today, we announced over 3.5% from outcrops, albeit, but, the widths and those grades, if you start putting it together, if the drilling starts confirming this, we have the potential to drill out something potentially meaningful. Actually very meaningful.
Well, you said there again, the 1970s, it's almost been known that there has been lithium there. And that's an interesting point before we dive into what the plans are. I mean, historically speaking, had there been a fair bit of work that you guys could then look at and use that as a point of reference? Or, I mean, what was the sorts of, I guess, inclinations that there was something potential quite here?
Look, to be honest, for us, it was realizing it off the back of the Azure discovery. Now, there was the way I understand it, there was a historical gemstone beryl mine just up the road. There was some tantalum exploration in the area, but lithium was never really explored for. They realized that maybe about 18 months ago that they had this potential, and that took off their success, which we're seeing today. Off the back of that, we realized that, we need to refocus onto exploration as well. So in terms of our projects and the discovery, hopeful drill discovery in the near term, it was boots on the ground work. It was sending teams out to map out these pegmatites, sample them, and that's been it.
And again, we're seeing those results start coming through now. As we said, it's the 9th of November. When this goes out, the announcement might be a few days old, but they had quite a good reaction to the market, but that's just on the stepping stone and timeline of work to be done, just really at the start of the incoming news flow. So, I mean, what you've just done now and brought to the market, I mean, what now is going through your mind as next steps and I guess planning for future drilling or getting approvals and stuff like that? So, what is the next 6 to 12 months sort of game plan looking like?
Uh, the absolute focus is drilling these projects, Andover South specifically. We're now working out. So what we've done is we've defined quite a high grade zone within an approximate 4 kilometer pegmatite field. There's about a 1.5 kilometer high grade zone, which is consistently providing us with these, 1, 2, 3% lithium results. So we are working through the steps to get all the permitting in place at the moment. Obviously, looking to get that in place as soon as possible, and get the drill rigs onto the ground. As the incoming data has been, very encouraging. What is happening is that we're extending the strike. We're seeing multiple pegmatites, so the drilling program is evolving. From okay, we want to put like maybe 5 holes into this pegmatite over here. All of a sudden, we're seeing a couple other areas we want to. So it's evolving the drill program. But over the next 6 to 12 months, I think what the market is probably aware of is we've been actively looking at our entire portfolio of projects as well. Arrow, Taba Taba, Mount Shoal, and just going back and reevaluating the lithium potential of these projects. And we've had quite a bit of success. We've recently announced some good results from the Arrow project, and we're hoping that Mount Shoal project will deliver as well.
Yeah, when I was looking at your website, I think that was the initial sort of factor for me. I was like, there's a lot of land, a lot of packages, and you sort of go, yeah, how do you allocate your resources effectively to make sure that again you're getting the work done and not having to go back to market? Because we know the moment it's quite difficult to raise some funds. Lithium is a bit easier, as we know. There's quite a thirst from investors to get a lithium return. But I do know that when you're talking about the scale of these projects, if I go back to Andover, again you've sort of identified a particular area. But when you're talking about the scale of how much area you guys have got and potentially how much more you've got to explore, I mean, can you paint a picture of how much land mass or area you've got and really where the potential future could come on that area?
Certainly. So, look at Andover. We've been very lucky because the pegmatites are outcropping. They're at surface. We can see them. So it's quite a simple story in terms of what we're going to do
Mm,
and where we're going to drill. The other projects, we're slowly working up the potential. Not slowly, actually. We're working quite rapidly.
quite
We're
quickly.
working simultaneously across multiple projects. But what I'm saying is we're looking at a step-by-step exploration process and evaluating each one. And then what we're going to hopefully do is bring up one, maybe even two more projects to a point where we can say, look, we're going to plan a drill campaign is justified at this point as well. In terms of financing, in order to get to these points, these are pretty low level expenditure exercises. We are, for example, at Arrow, we're just reassaying historical soil sampling. So there's no great cost there. Boots on the ground, satellite imagery analysis, and geochemistry. So through these exercises, we're not going through a major cash burn. We are saving the majority of our funds for the drilling campaign at Andover South. But hopefully, it'll buy a portfolio of projects for the company. So in terms of the non-lithium, and let's call them
Mm,
non-core projects at the moment as well, there is a large portfolio of projects. I agree with you. I think 12 months ago we stated to the market, look, we're gonna divest the non-core assets. We're not gonna be focused on these projects, and we're gonna try and deliver as much value for shareholders and the company through those transactions. And we've done that over the last 12 months. We've probably done about 5-6 transactions, which is pretty meaningful because each one of them generates some sort of upside for shareholders. It's brought in stock, cash, and we're going to continue to do that. So in Eastern Europe, we've still got several projects which are highly prospective, but obviously we cannot focus on everything. So we have some very exciting copper gold projects here, which we're going to look to deliver as much value for as we can. Same thing in Australia. We've got several gold projects which we want we want to see them explored. We don't want to focus on them ourselves. We want to see the upside from these things. And then there's obviously the Mount Shoal nickel, copper, palladium project. So this is it's a very exciting story, even though it may not be the flavor of the month right now.
Yes. Yeah.
For the markets, but as management, we sort of have to balance out, what we do with these projects, and to make sure that we look at the long-term picture to derive as much value for shareholders out of the entire portfolio. So within that portfolio as well, it's the biggest nickel copper resource in the district. It's open in every direction. The deposits are open. The mineralization is open. It's got a lot of room for growth. It's supported by incredible infrastructure. I mean, that's one thing about the Pilbara. We have all the supporting infrastructure that we need there. So we're looking at, strategic ways how to essentially move all of these projects forward, but management is clearly focused on moving the Andover South project and the lithium portfolio in general forward.
And again, I like to focus on the Andover because I know that's what a lot of investors are probably following and asking you questions about. And I know everyone will just instantly go gravitate towards Azure, but there's plenty of other players in that area that are also likely having similar successes. So, I mean, who else is in that surrounding area nearby you? And I mean, a question that I love is there any sort of collaborations or discussions between groups? Because I mean, the reality is that, your project might be up to a certain area, but then, these resources underneath don't really see a boundary and they just continue for, different directions all the time. So what's the dynamics like working in this area now? Because I can imagine it's quite a popular place to be. And there's a lot of interest from external groups as well, looking to get a foothold in.
I think from a corporate point of view, is one of the most attractive areas to be in at the moment. In terms of who's doing what, look, I mean, I would say pretty much everybody's looking for lithium right now up in the Pilbara, and just going back and dusting off all of their old plans and maps and trying to figure out who's got some pegmatites. Look, we were, in one way we're very lucky. We weren't a company that went into the Pilbara and we're trying to secure ground now off the back of all the corporate success that's been happening. Next to thanks to Azure, Wildcats, so many companies have had some phenomenal success. So we weren't trying to build up our portfolio off the back of that. We had the portfolio, so we're in a very very fortunate position where we're going back. We're just looking at our own projects, and we've had success from that. At this point, collaboration. Ultimately, I think you can see the consolidation happening and a lot of external interest in the area. But at this point, I think we focused on just seeing what we have right now and drilling it out. Once it's drilled out and what you have from a resource point of view, I think later down the line, these are the discussions which we may have and which will naturally evolve. We'll see who has what resources. But what we're really aiming for and what everybody's aiming for is ultimately to define a standalone deposit that can stand on its feet. You can look to develop it yourself. It's got the size potential, and look, that's the focus. And we're pretty hopeful that with the size of the pegmatites and the grades that we're actually defining right now, we have a pretty good shot at it.
And you said there the Shoal project, which is focused on nickel, copper, palladium. I mean, that, as you said, is not necessarily flavor of the month from an investment point of view. Copper, for me personally, and I think a lot of commentators have said that it's a no-brainer given the electrification future, but there's just, I guess, like, there's just no excitement about it. But I mean, diving through a bit more of that, you said open in all directions and in a great location. I mean, what do you anticipate or what do you plan to sort of develop that? And is there going to be much news flow coming out about sort of some of the activities that are happening there over the coming, 6 to 12 months? Or is it all just focused on getting a drilling program underway there as well?
Yeah. Firstly, on copper, I agree. I mean, I'm a huge copper bull as well. Obviously, lithium is the no-brainer, but I think copper supply side is always going to be so constrained, because if you look at, just simply look at the head grades that have been coming out of Chile over the last couple of decades. They're down by
Declining grades, yeah.
Two-thirds. So you cannot increase copper supply by I don't even know. I'd be hesitant to say even by 25% in a short amount of time. So I think it's a commodity with a bright future, and I think that's what really kind of also highlights the Mount Shoal project for us, is because it's about a 1-to-1 ratio between copper and nickel. Palladium is a pretty significant byproduct in the project as well within the resource. So what you have is, with the geopolitical situation today, if you kind of just have a look around the world where a huge amount of palladium is coming from, where is that supply going to be coming from in future?
Mm.
So I'm quite bullish long term on the palladium supply as well, medium to long term. Now, in terms of mineralization at Mount Shoal, it's mineralization sits within an ultramafic intrusion. It's sitting along the contact. It's outcropping, and most of the historical drilling. By the way, there was about 80,000 meters of historical drilling on the project.
Oh, wow. So
Has
this has had a
been
fair bit of work already done on it as well.
has had a fair amount of work on it. Correct. We had a drilling campaign recently on this about a year ago. We came out with the results. We worked out the resource to about just under 24 million tons in an open pit and a 0.35% cutoff. And in terms of, if we're talking about room for growth, the resource is basically defined by four deposits which are sitting on these contacts, and it's only constrained by existing drilling, right, along strike, along depth. So it's a very exciting project. Just there aren't many nickel, copper, palladium, sulfide deposits sitting within 40 kilometers of a port, a couple of kilometers of a power line, gas line in Australia. So we're quite bullish on this project. We're currently working our way through metallurgy. There was a to undertake to see how low we can bring the cutoff grades. That obviously then impacts on the amount of tonnage as well that we have there in metal content. And we're going to look for ways. Right now, it's not the focus, but we're gonna look for ways how to move this project forward, and hopefully, it is something that provides potential to shareholders in the medium to the long run as well.
And I said at the outset that, we're speaking remotely because, you're not based in Australia, but I can imagine that you're traveling here a fair bit to giving a geologist want to get out in the field and want to see all this sort of stuff. But you've got a team that's arguably operating at all different hours of the day. And I know that's, the modern world now that we've got people all over the world. But how does the team sort of manage that, given that, you're six hours behind, I think, roughly? We don't have daylight savings in WA, so that's sort of a little bit helpful. But, there's a lot of complications and factors of that. How does the team manage all those, distances and time zone barriers?
With a lot of coffee. Look, it's you're right. We have two directors in Australia. So I actually moved to Eastern Europe for these projects, for the portfolio, in order to run the projects here. One of our directors is in Australia. I beg your pardon, in Canada. So there are quite a few time zones which we are covering. And in terms of management, we have a technical team and technical management team in Australia. All the administration and support is in Australia. I'm busy packing right now. I make my way to Australia pretty regularly, and will be doing so, as we're going forward. But ultimately, we also try and kind of look at the positive of it. We have a regular meetings with the team. I mean, multiple meetings throughout the day, obviously, thanks to technology today. But what happened, we've said we try and get 2 days into 1 day. So if the guys are, in Australia, they're 6-7 hours ahead of me, we catch up what they've done throughout the day, and I catch up over the next work day. So, we're actually getting 2 days out of a day in a way.
Oh, very nice. And who else is on the team with you? You just said then there's a few directors, but there's a few people that are surrounding you that I can imagine have either been there from the beginning or have come in as it's sort of developed. So who else is, I guess, on the board and management, and, as you said, the technical team?
Certainly. So Michael Davey, he's the non-executive chairman of the companies, and myself and Mike worked pretty closely from the beginning, from 2017, essentially, to set up the company. So we've been pretty constant on the board of the company. He's based in Perth, a very active non-executive chairman, I would say so as well. Kyla Garrick, she is based in Perth. She's our COSEC and a non-executive director. She runs her own consultancy firm out of Perth, and a lot of experience with ASX, with regulation. Dale Jin is on the board. Now, Dale he's a very accomplished geologist. He's based in Canada. They essentially started the portfolio in Australia, which we then acquired from Pacton Gold. So he's the representative from Pacton Gold on there. And we get a lot of support from it's still quite a small team in terms of, the board and management, but we get a lot of support from the non-executive board. And on the management side, we have Warwick Clent. Warwick is a geologist. He is originally a Kiwi, but he's been in Australia for a very long time. He's based in Perth. He does all the regular runs up to the Pilbara and manages the day-to-day programs, and we work very closely together. And ultimately, with the success now that we've had in the Pilbara with Andover South and gearing up for potentially multiple drill campaigns, we are actively looking to grow the team as well. It's always, you have this transition from, which we were junior 6 months ago, with a very struggling share price and, not the healthiest of balance sheets. But as that, with the success now, we're cognizant we need to grow and evolve as a company. And that's something we're looking to do right now.
Yeah, you've phrased it as, say, luck, but it's more of that intersection between timing and luck and what the market wants. And I think that's definitely been a factor, given that the spotlight is now all over the Andover area. And there's not really going to be anything that drives people away for a while at least. And given that the outlook for lithium and a variety of other electrical materials for the electrification future means that, that we're going to need more mines, more discoveries at sort of exponential rates. I don't like to look at too many of the predictions because everyone's got a different one, and I think it just gets a little bit too difficult to believe it. But an interesting point that I really want to know, more so from what drives geologists or maybe yourself in exploration, and sort of trying to find what the rewarding parts of the sector or industry are versus the things that frustrate you. So I guess if we start with the positives and we go the rewarding aspects of being in an exploration team and being a geologist and a managing director, I mean, what are the rewarding factors for you personally?
Look, we're all driven by discovery, really. Ultimately, especially as an exploration geologist, I've spent some time in the mine as well, several mines. But really, what drives me is discovery. That's, like to go back and think to my younger days. There is no downside. I'm paid to go out and try and explore, which is just such a privilege. So really, that's ultimately what drives us, is to actually be able to put your name behind a discovery. And the really exciting thing right now is that we may be on the cusp of being able to achieve something like that, especially at Andover South. Timing is very important, as you said. You can do all the technical work, you can get everything done right. You got to be at the right place at the right time, within the right commodity, within the right capital market cycle, and everything. It's working out for us right now, so it's great. The downside, look, it is some of exactly what I've said right now, where we have been fortunate, because as a company, we've been in positions where we've done a lot of things that are right. We've had technical success, we've had everything right, but the market conditions or sentiment may turn against you. So that's really the frustrating part, that you are a little bit at the mercy of the market sentiments, of geopolitical events, all of these things. So you can put in years of work into a project, really do great technical work, have exploration luck and success, but it ultimately doesn't translate into share price success. And that's where, it's a bit challenging being a director in a company, which is at the behest of the exploration and market wins. You got to take the good with the bad. And when the good times are here and you are in the right place at the right time, act quickly.
Yeah, and especially nowadays, it's been quite difficult for many investors, but there's definitely been those shining bright lights that have just raced away, and people have done, exceptionally well out of it, and good on them. But I know that there's really this emphasis on potentially going back to the traditional, being a bit more patient, and taking time, because a lot of this exploration is all ramping up again over the past handful of years, because there'd been such a underdevelopment in mining. And now it doesn't just happen overnight. There's a lot of steps that have to be ticked off before you make a big discovery and you start a mine, which is the end goal of everyone. But for listeners now that are, I'm sure many have already actually seen it or heard of it, but want to know more about Raiden Resources, and I guess follow the company and the news flow and updates. I mean, where can they go to stay on top of all the news flow coming?
Look, our website, raidenresources.com.au. I think go and have a look at the presentations and have a look at the news flow. We've been very active. We try to keep the market as informed as possible, and put out as much news as we can, which we have been doing in the last several months. We're working on multiple projects. Have a look. I'm normally very available to all shareholders. Try and answer all emails and reach out and follow us on the social media networks. And yeah.
I was going to say, if you send an email, you'll probably expect it to come a few hours later for most Australians if you're sending one, given the time zone. But besides that, it's no, that's great. No, I appreciate your time. Yeah. No, I appreciate your time on the show, because given the recent success now, it's definitely an area and a company that people will be having a spotlight and a focus on, and potentially adding to their watch list as well. But yeah, thank you, Dusko, for taking the time to speak with me, and bring on the next stages of the company and see what happens.
Yeah, that's it. Drilling as soon as possible, and hopefully, we have confirmation from the drill bit.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I'll see you in Australia hopefully in the future. But yeah, thank you so much for speaking on the show today.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Market Bull podcast. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow the Market Bull on our socials at Twitter and LinkedIn by searching The Market Bull. You can also subscribe to our newsletter on the website by visiting www.themarketbull.com.au.